powerful 5-minute motivation. You know the feeling. The task is huge. The mountain is steep, and you're waiting for this magical force called motivation to show up and give you the energy to start. But it never does. You're stuck in a cycle of procrastination, feeling overwhelmed and defeated before you even begin. What if I told you that the key to unlocking your motivation isn't a long, dramatic struggle, but a simple, almost laughably small action? It's a secret weapon that uses your brain's own wiring against itself. It's called the 5-minute rule. This isn't just a life hack, it's a sophisticated psychological strategy backed by neuroscience. To understand why it works, you have to understand why we get stuck in the first place. Your brain's primary resistance isn't to hard work itself, but to the idea of hard work. This is what neuroscientists call limbic friction, the high mental effort required to initiate a task. We often find ourselves paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of a goal, and our brains, in an attempt to conserve energy, choose to avoid the perceived mental threat. The 5-minute rule is specifically designed to bypass this initial resistance. By committing to just 5 minutes, you trick your brain into starting. Once to initiate the action, a powerful chain reaction begins in your brain. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex, a region often described as the willpower hub, gets activated. This, in turn, triggers a release of the neurotransmitter dopamine, which is central to both motivation and willpower. Contrary to the popular belief that it is a pleasure chemical, research indicates that dopamine is more accurately described as a pursuit molecule. Its primary function is to drive motivation and goal-seeking behavior, not to directly create feelings of euphoria. Dopamine is released in response to the anticipation of a reward, not the reward itself, compelling both physical and mental effort toward a desired outcome. This fundamental distinction reframes motivation as a drive for action rather than a search for a feeling. This is why the act of starting is so crucial. You don't need motivation to start. You start to generate motivation. The cause and effect relationship is inverted. A small action acts as a catalyst for the generation of motivation. The effectiveness of a 5-minute intervention is amplified by several powerful psychological principles that transform a single action into a sustained effort. One of the most significant is the concept of behavioral momentum. Research indicates that taking any small, initial action dramatically increases the likelihood of continued action by as much as 340%. This is akin to applying Newton's first law of motion to human behavior. An object at rest tends to stay at rest, but an object in motion tends to stay in motion. The initial 5-minute push serves as the force needed to overcome the state of rest. Furthermore, the brain possesses a completion, compulsion, a neurological drive to finish what has been started. This is closely related to the Zeigarnik Effect, which suggests that people have a stronger tendency to remember and feel a sense of unease about incomplete tasks, compared to completed ones. When a person begins a task, even for just 5 minutes, it creates a psychologically incomplete state that the brain is naturally inclined to resolve. This impulse to complete the task is further reinforced by the dopamine release that occurs upon starting, which reinforces the desire to continue the work and gain a sense of accomplishment. And for all the perfectionists out there, this rule is your ultimate anxiety antidote. Studies show that a large percentage of chronic procrastinators are actually perfectionists who delay starting tasks because they fear producing mediocre work. By committing to only 5 minutes, a person is granted permission to suck at the thing. A masterpiece is impossible in such a short time, which removes the pressure and shrinks the emotional threat of a large task. This minimal commitment helps to reduce cortisol levels and increase feel-good neurotransmitters, transforming a daunting task into a low-stakes activity. Finally, this approach reduces cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that arises when a person's beliefs conflict with their behaviors. For an individual who values a particular goal but struggles to take action, a small, tangible step helps to align their behavior with their beliefs, gradually reducing this internal conflict and making them more likely to continue the behavior in the future. The effectiveness of a 5-minute intervention is therefore multifaceted, leveraging these principles to dismantle psychological barriers, trigger momentum, and initiate a powerful, self-reinforcing cycle of action. So, how do you apply this in your life? Let's build your 5-minute motivation toolkit. The cornerstone of brief motivational interventions is the 5-minute rule. This simple principle requires an individual to commit to a dreaded task for just 5 minutes, with the explicit permission to stop immediately afterward. This removes the overwhelming mental barrier of committing to a large, undefined block of time, and often leads to a phenomenon where momentum carries the individual far beyond the initial time limit. The technique's power lies in its ability to trick the brain into moving past the friction of starting, at which point the work itself becomes less daunting than the initial fear of it. A structured evolution of this principle is the Pomodoro technique, which typically involves 25 minutes of focused work followed by a 5-minute break. While its benefits for increased productivity are well documented, its underlying mechanism is a powerful neurological hack. The technique prevents the brain from becoming habituated to a prolonged, unchanging task, a phenomenon known as vigilance. Similar to how the brain stops registering a constant stimulus like the feeling of clothing on the skin, it also tunes out a constant mental task, leading to a decline in performance. By deactivating and reactivating a goal through a short, unrelated diversion, like a 5-minute break, a person's ability to focus on the main task is dramatically improved. The purpose of the break, therefore, is not merely to rest, but to serve as a neurological reset that sharpens concentration, revealing a deeper genius within the method. There are many other quick techniques you can add to your toolkit. Feeling sluggish? Try an exercise snack, just 5 minutes of physical activity, like a quick walk or a few jumping jacks, can boost blood flow and oxygen to your brain, giving you an immediate surge of energy and focus. 4. Mental clarity. A short burst of activity has been shown to improve mental agility and problem-solving skills, enhancing overall brain health. From an environmental perspective, decluttering a workspace for just 5 minutes can dramatically reduce cognitive load, allowing the brain to focus entirely on the task at hand. When a person removes external distractions and visual clutter, their brain can direct its energy more efficiently. For an internal shift, practices like gratitude and visualization are effective in reshaping one's internal state. Writing down 3 things one is grateful for shifts the mindset from focusing on what is lacking to what is abundant, which reinforces positive feelings and increases the desire to take action. This can be combined with visualizing a future self to connect present effort to future emotional reward, thereby using an internal vision to fuel current action. Finally, even something as simple as listening to music for a few minutes can alter your mood and increase energy. As music has a strong link to emotional response, this isn't about one-time boosts. It's about a new way of living. The most profound effect of these small actions is the compound effect. Getting just 1% better each day for 1 year doesn't just add up, it compounds to a 37 times improvement. The seemingly insignificant impact of a 5-minute action compounds over time, building momentum. But its most profound long-term effect is not just the completion of a specific goal. Instead, it is the fundamental transformation of a person's identity. By consistently keeping small commitments, a person begins to see themselves as someone who follows through. This shift in self-perception, or the building of efficacy beliefs, is the true engine of sustainable, long-term change. The ripple effect starts in the brain with a physiological hack dopamine release, moves to action, behavioral momentum, and culminates in a new, more effective identity efficacy beliefs. This transition demonstrates that the ultimate value of the 5-minute rule is not speed, but its ability to rewire one's self-concept, creating a new version of oneself that is fundamentally more capable of maintaining motivation and achieving goals. However, an expert-leveled approach requires addressing potential pitfalls and nuance. A common trap is the over-reliance on extrinsic motivators, such as tangible rewards or prizes. While these can be useful to initiate behavior, they can also diminish intrinsic motivation, a phenomenon known as the over-justification effect. This occurs when a person begins to attribute their effort to the external reward, rather than to the inherent value or interest of the task itself. The result is that when the reward is removed, motivation for the task plummets. Therefore, it is critical to use extrinsic rewards strategically, either to support a nascent intrinsic motivation or to celebrate achievements thoughtfully, without replacing the internal drive. Similarly, the role of dopamine must be handled with nuance. While the brain's reward system is key to generating momentum, mindlessly seeking a dopamine hit can lead to poor impulse control. Tu aboith, tis. It is essential to celebrate wins, not with a dopamine bomb, but by taking time to savor the achievement, giving a sense of closure and appreciating the hard work that led to the result. A final, crucial distinction is the one between a lack of motivation will and a lack of ability skill. No amount of motivational intervention can overcome a fundamental skill deficit. An individual may be unmotivated to perform a task because they lack the necessary knowledge or skills, not because they are lazy or simply unwilling to try. In such cases, the problem is not a lack of will, and the solution is not a motivational tactic, but rather a need for training or learning. This requires a person to be honest about the root cause of their inaction and to address the core problem directly. Don't wait for motivation to strike. It's a result of action, not a prerequisite. What's one thing you've been putting off? That report, that workout, that messy closet? Take out your phone, set a timer for just 5 minutes, and start. Because it turns out, millions of years of evolution is no match for a timer. The timer starts now. The path to your next major accomplishment is a series of short, deliberate 5